The quicker that you can compound that. So welcome to the Ryan Magic Show. Today I'm here with one of my really close friends, Mark Bowness. Thanks for coming on, man.
It's an honor and a pleasure, and always fun to hang out with you, buddy.
Yeah, it is fun. So as I said before we jump on, I tend to just flow with wherever these go. I don't have a very specific set of questions. So first thing I'd love to know is, what's your secret?
What's my secret? That's a great question. I love that there's no prep. Just what's the secret?
I actually did prep that. I was thinking about it right before I jumped on. I'd be like, if I sprung that on you, it's going to set off the tone of a fun interview.
Secret?
But I'd like you to answer still. What's your secret?
Absolutely. Secret. Well, for me, it's all about balance. Seriously, it's about balance. It's, I've worked really hard on my business, and you kind of go one end where you just work like crazy and then realize that something else is out of balance, like relationships. And so for me, it really is. It's balance with all areas of our lives, and really appreciating the fact that actually we are alive. And so I think it's so easy to just work so hard and chase whatever the dreams that we have are, and actually negate the fact that we have the ability to live on planet Earth and just really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I'm excited that you said that at the start of this interview, because it's going to lead us down lots of topics to do with bringing fulfillment into business. And both of us are coaches, and we both help coaches and serve coaches as well. So it's going to be, I think it's really important for people that get into the coaching space usually do because they've had a really tough upbringing.
Yeah, for sure.
Or gone through some hardship in their life at some point that's allowed them to, or that's had them land at a point where they're like, I'm really stuck right now and I need some help outside of my current sphere of resources, whether it's a family and friends, and that I need an answer, I need some help. And what I'd actually really like for you to retell, I've heard you tell it lots of times. I mentioned this last time we had just a catch up as friends about your story of the turning point in your life. And I said to you recently that I heard that story a lot, but I kind of didn't really feel into how incredible it is. And I remember the content of it, and I'd love for you to tell the listeners about that turning point in your life that had you first kind of like start going after a bigger life.
Yeah, sure. So long story short as possible, but I'm one of 6 children, brought up in the UK, now living in Australia. But I was brought up in a Christian environment. We went to church every Sunday morning, and I was the kind of the crazy kid at Sunday school. I was like disrupting the class, and like at the end of the class, like the Sunday school teacher would be kind of marching towards my parents, and my parents were like, oh my gosh, what's he done again? But it took me down this journey of actually I studied theology. My undergraduate degree was in theology and religious studies, and learning about the world at a deeper level. And that took me on the path of actually becoming a church leader. I got married, and I was running if you think about the highest possible way that you could seek to build a business, I was doing the same in the Christian world. I'd written a Christian book. I was producing 2 magazines that were kind of every quarter each. I was speaking in front of churches and massive kind of congregations of literally thousands of people.
Wow.
But at the same time, I always knew that I was gay. And my religious Christian beliefs were in direct contradiction with what I innately felt that I was. And it was absolutely painful. I remember, like, at one stage of my life, you're so torn inside because you kind of have these feelings towards the same sex, and yet the Bible's telling you that it's wrong, and you feel so torn. And I remember at one stage in my bedroom, we had a dartboard, and I literally was so torn that I was throwing darts at this board, and it was either good or bad. And I was literally saying, God, if you want me on your team, let this dart land on number 6. And literally, Satan, if you want me on your team, land it on 11 or whatever it was. It was just such a powerful turmoil. And it
Holy
got to the
crap.
stage where I believed that, God could heal me, or that I could love somebody I could love an individual no matter what their outside bits were. So I got married, and it just fell apart. Like, I was speaking on stage on a Sunday morning, and my relationship was kind of struggling, and we were arguing, and came to this kind of ultimate point where my marriage ended, and my wife walked out, and I knew in that moment, I saw my future as this dark place that I didn't want to walk into. The most difficult thing for me was to come out to myself, given the environment that I was brought up in. And so that night I turned to Google, and I Googled most quickest and painless way to die. And that night I literally attempted to take my own life.
Holy shit. How old were you when your wife ended the relationship?
Yeah. I
With-
mean, I'd struggled with my sexuality, and I started to get to the place where I told her that, but it was all it was just crazy, Ryan. The church context that I was in, I had church leaders laying hands on me to get rid of the demon of homosexuality. That's
Whoa.
the level that it got to, and it was
Whoa.
just painful, to tell you that who you are is innately wrong, and that God doesn't like you or hates you or despises what it is that you do, was an absolute mind fuck.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. So how old were you when your
Yeah.
wife walked out?
So I was about 25. I got married
Wow.
young.
Yeah.
So 25. And yeah, so she left, and I knew that I would never see her again. And to this day, I haven't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Holy crap. So you would have been in like in another point. You doing a lot at age 25. Like you'd built
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, at university, I was literally at university, and I was, building this non-profit organization. I was taking young people to Africa, to spend time with children living on streets and in the streets, and rubbish tips and orphanages. Like, aside from the inner turmoil, it was all about kind of doing good in the world. That's always what I've been about.
How did you come about that? How did you first get into realizing that you could make a difference and doing that at uni?
Um, Ironically, I think it was because of my Christian upbringing that,
Mm,
irrespective of religious beliefs or anything, but here was a story of a guy who, Jesus,
mm.
that went into the world and just did good. Now, whether we believe those stories to be true or not, it's still like we're inspired by films that kind of motivate us and inspire us to do good. To me, here was this guy. There's evidence of the fact that the person of Jesus existed. Now, whether he died for the sins of the humanity is another conversation, but somebody going out, spending time with lepers, with prostitutes, with the people that nobody else would hang out with, that kind of inspired me to think altruistically about what I want my time on earth to be about.
Wow, that's really cool. And was there any like motivation at that young age as well to like, well, who are you trying to demonstrate yourself to? Was it also like God as well, potentially? Like, I'm trying to do good, so God, you recognize that I'm on your side, and any of that? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, it was more so. There's a verse in the Bible that says, basically, those who believe in Jesus should walk as Jesus did. And actually, the whole name of the organization that I created was called Walk Like Jesus Walked. And it
Mm,
was exactly like I wanted to just do good in the world. Again, at university, I would hang out with homeless people. So at night, I'd spend time with homeless people, giving out food and kind of rugs and blankets. And I had a young homeless guy who he was about 19, 20. His homeless girlfriend was pregnant, and I had him stay at my house for a few weeks just because he needed somewhere to crash and have a decent shower. Like, that's the kind of life that I wanted to live.
wow. Did we play around with the idea of doing like a life change show? Like I might just be imagining things, or maybe it was just something I thought of, but I just have a feeling that you thought about the idea of doing a TV show where for 6 weeks you take a bunch of homeless people into a house and then transform their lives.
Yeah, we did discuss lots of crazy ideas around that.
Yeah.
Um, but again, as business owners, we get so lost in running the business and building the business, and we just get so lost in our own little world. But I think if we think outside the box, there's so much awesome stuff that we can do creatively.
Yeah, and you're a really crazy example of that because, and that's one thing that I did know I set the intention to explore on this chat is how you have the courage to take big ideas
Mm,
into the world
mm,
to, because for me it's I've always thrived off being able to do things in volume. So
mm,
like easier access to doing that task, like a podcast interview. I can do heaps of podcast interview.
mm,
The idea of doing like one big initiative that has to hit with a TV network or something big like what we did together, This Is Your Life Change.
mm,
That's always been a little bit more scary for me because it puts a lot more pressure on the outcome.
mm.
How do you get the courage to do that, and what are some of the initiatives that you've actually attempted to get going?
Mm. So I think again for the context for listeners, so after I attempted to take my own life, I woke up in hospital the next day with this kind of crazy understanding of how precious life is. And you and I used to joke about this because I used to say that we can touch life, we can interact with it, we can mold with it, and used to
I remember that.
do a great version of me saying that. But
That was
and
Cam. That was Cam, actually, the salesperson. Do you remember him?
oh, somebody else's fault, was it? It's always
That
somebody else.
I don't know whose fault it was. I just know it wasn't mine.
But anyway, so um, I did it. So waking up in hospital the next day, it was this really incredible understanding, literally, that life seriously is precious. That we get so used to living life, we're just so privileged and used to it. But I don't think we take any of the opportunities that we could do. So I came up with the crazy idea to lease a 200-acre island in Fiji and invite the world to become tribe members. And it was a crazy idea. It was 200-acre island. There was nothing on it. And people could join us online and decide what they wanted to do on the island. So it was an eco island. So what accommodation, food, electricity. You've been to the island. It's a beautiful
Mm,
island in
mm.
Fiji. And literally 3 months after attempting to take my own life, it was in 200 media outlets around the world. And again, it was insane because we were doing Good Morning America, Today Show, New York Times, and yet I was still mentally dealing with the fact that 3 months earlier I tried to kill myself, you know.
Wow.
But but so that was the context. In order to answer your question, for me at the time, well, I tried to kill myself. So if I launched a global business and let's say that went bankrupt, it didn't matter. I became fearless because there was nothing worse than not being here. So
That's
it gave me
so
this,
powerful.
yeah, this audacious, crazy kind of confidence to go, if it fails, so what?
Yeah. And, that's Gary Vee preaches the same message very intensely around the idea of, you won the lottery 400 trillion to one, or you
Mm,
could die, or you will die. It's like
yeah.
you're gonna die. Is this like that thing that he brings up to motivate people? It obviously drives him, and that obviously drives you. And I'm just looking back at the time when I launched Winning in the first place. The
Mm.
thing that motivated me at that time was writing out my own eulogy.
Yeah, I
And
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and then I went, holy shit, well, I could die, and I don't want to die and then not have done what I actually really wanted to do just because I was scared. So that's so interesting, and that's like such a great example of the polarities of life. The contrast that are created makes the polarity that we have a preference for so much more special, like death and life,
Mm.
or right, like good and bad, and pain and pleasure.
To go into that a little bit deeper, that statement that you made, which is truth, the fact that I am going to die. it's just such a powerful, profound statement that we do just get so busy with the life that we have, and like
Mm,
we have the potential to like, it always amazes me that anything from a business point of view, anything that you see, touch, that you wear, that you, whether it's a plane or anything, has been created in the mind of somebody
mm,
who then went all out to turn it into reality. And if we look at the world that we're in now in terms of COVID and businesses going under, and high unemployment rates, those situations are only going to be solved by those who dare to think outside the box, to create new ideas and inventions and businesses. That's what we need right now.
yeah,
And it comes from that perspective of, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. So what do I want my life to be here about?
yeah. And it's so interesting because as I went through the whole process of getting more into spirituality and learning to love myself unconditionally, I kind of became got a lot of apathy, because I was like, I actually did feel full in a meditation. And then in my life, when I took away all my attachments, and I was just like, sweet, I'm not attached anymore, it's all good. And then I was like, so what's the point of doing
Yeah,
anything?
yeah.
And then I arrived at this, like I was catching up with these really wealthy business owners every month as a part of a group that I was in. And these guys did between $5 and $150 million a year, and all doing goal setting and vision work. And I'm
Mm,
just wondering, I'm thinking like, well, I need to know why I'm going to set a vision. I just need to know
mm,
why. And I ended up like, I couldn't find a why other than the opposite of it, which was why not? Because I'm going to live here anyway. I can still find, it doesn't matter what happens, we are going to die. So we may as well treat this like a video game and just do
mm,
whatever we feel like excited to do.
yeah. And it's living outside the box in that way. I mean, again, like I've never worked for anybody else. I've never been in a situation where I've been employed by somebody else. There are times like when the last global financial crisis hit in about 2007, there's so many jobs that, people, like hundreds of people applying for the one job in the UK. And I went to a TV production company. I made a list of TV production companies and that I wanted to work for, and they weren't advertising. I knew that if I went for jobs that people were advertising, then there'd be so much competition. So I went to them directly and asked for a meeting to tell them why they should create a role for me.
Mm.
And as a result, I was employed by a company called Endemol, one of the biggest TV production companies in the world. And they gave me a job, which is to come up with the ideas for TV shows, to get paid to create ideas for TV shows. And I think it's so easy for us to accept the situations that we're in, or, we can convince ourselves that in this environment that we're in, nobody wants to buy coaching packages or courses or programs, or we convince ourselves. And yet, just thinking outside the box, we can create any future or any wealth or any opportunity that we want for ourselves.
That's so powerful, Mark. That's such an impressive story of going to, and that job sounds like the coolest job as well. Because I
It
know,
really was.
I know like what you love to do, which is create big ideas and concepts. And that was
Yeah.
your full-time job that you
Yeah.
created from nothing.
And it was great because, like, they would encourage you to go anywhere for inspiration. So
Wow.
they would pay me, like, and I would just be like, oh, I'm just at the history museum today, just checking it out because I think something there might inspire me. Like, it would just be like, Mark, where are you today? Don't know. I'm on a plane.
Where? Don't know.
you know.
That's so good. So you had this, that was a big idea, a big concept. You had Tribe, what was it?
I wanted.
Tribe Wanted. Yeah, I thought Tribe Wanted in my head, and it's like, it sounds like a murder mystery. Tribe
It could have turned out that way.
Wanted. Not with Tui Bali around. So Mark and I have got lots of funny stories about the chief of the island, which we won't go into now. But, so you had Tribe Wanted. We had This Is Your Life Change, was another big concept that you created. Do you want to
Mm.
tell the listeners about that concept?
Yeah, and that was great to work with you on. It was just incredible experience, and the whole idea there was to take people back to the island. So we launched it at the beginning of January, wasn't it? And it was the idea that we all have kind of New Year's resolutions, but what if you could just totally change your life? and make a decision that I'm not just going to, have a resolution, but do something totally different in my life. So we invited 6 people from all over the world on an all expenses paid trip to the island. They had to come with a secret dream, which was business or charity or whatever it was. And then we kind of smashed body, mind, and business in order to make it happen. And we had the most incredible people from the UK, America. Where else did we have? Like somewhere in Europe, Maria was from.
Grace.
Greece, yeah. And, you and I just smashed it with them for however, was it 2 weeks?
It was 2 weeks.
Gosh, longest 2 weeks of our life.
The way that we structured it was there were 14 days. There was an entry and an exit day, and then there were 12 days left. We took them through these 6 pillars. On one of so 2 days for each pillar. And the first day we'd teach them I think the first day we do the experience, the challenge.
Yeah, right.
We did teaching on one day and we did a challenge on another day. And so we're coming up with these crazy initiatives of how can we demonstrate the principle that we're going to teach them on the next day. And one of them was resilience and never giving up. And we literally got 2 boats and we took the 6 contestants 4 kilometers offshore. You couldn't even see the island. And we're like, all right, or maybe you could just see the island in the distance. And we're like, all right, jump out and you guys are going to swim for 4 kilometers back. And I just remember thinking it has to be so extreme that when they do it and they succeed with it, hopefully they'd succeed with it, that they keep that memory in their mind forever and use it as a metaphor for what they're capable of.
Yeah.
It was really interesting looking at the different stages and themes that they went through. Because at the start they were like, oh, ha, 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 it's all fun. And then they got to a point where then they're like, we're doing this. And then it got to a point where it's like, oh, I'm getting tired. And they started getting a bit lethargic. They started to get quite angry as well and annoyed. They were triggering each other. They were even getting angry at us at one point. And then they started getting to a point where they're teamwork set in and they had to solve that anger and be resourceful because we weren't going to let them back in the boat. And then they got to a point where they could see the island that was close enough that they started to pick up steam. They got hope and they're like, no, we can do this. And they really started encouraging each other. And they stormed probably the last kilometer back. And they were their eyes were red. They were seriously messed up when they got to that island.
But they'll remember it forever, won't they?
Yeah, legit. I remember how motivated they were and proud of each other and themselves.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
And it was incredible. And even after that, in terms of what happened in their lives afterwards, one of them sold their gym business, Dan, as a direct result of what we spoke to him about. Alistair quit his job in the UK and launched a graphic design company. Even Ben Desson, who's quite well known in Australia now as a wildlife expert, he's always on morning TV shows.
Yeah.
He's doing really, really well. And I've actually been doing some work with him recently and helping him to get into the media. So awesome. It's just still incredible stuff that happened as a result. Again, thinking outside the box, being creative. And I think that's exactly what we need right now in order to bring about awesome change, transformation, and to increase our income.
Yeah, totally. And Alistair, who quit his job and started the consultancy, tripled the income he was making as working as a graphic designer in his own business. And he had a kid, or he had kids on the way?
I think he had a couple of kids.
Yeah, and so he was really nervous for their well-being making that switch, and he just had the courage. I think one thing that they all had was the willingness and the courage to make those steps.
Do you remember I know this is not relevant to the listeners, but just very quickly, but it is important. So on the island, we had them all line up, and and you were encouraging them to shout and really be strong in their goals and intentions. And Alistair was one that really broke down. He really broke down, and it was a case of rebuilding people in order to build them up again.
Yeah,
and to take this back to listeners who are probably thinking, amazing, but how does this apply to me?
Question.
Coaching businesses, we follow what the gurus in inverted commas tell us to do, and therefore we've all got carbon copies of coaching businesses, and yet we need to stand out from the crowd. And I think, again, bringing creativity and change and transformation through our processes, that will really capture people. If you look at from an NLP point of view, what we did on the island was kinesthetic, it was auditory, it was visual. It really tapped into all the elements that, and I think, therefore set about a powerful opportunity for change and transformation.
I just thought of one memory I have to share before we get back on track. The listeners will enjoy it anyway. We're doing this ceremony. Okay, it was either the first or the last night, and we're all sitting down and having their local like substance that they call kava. It's like muddy water that kind of like numbs your body, and it kind of like, it's like an anxiety. They actually use it in
relaxes your body, doesn't it? Right.
It relaxes your body. There was this guy, the videographer. It was Mark, right? Mark.
We shouldn't name names, but yes.
Yeah, we definitely should. And out of nowhere, everyone's silent. It's like this point of this, like, all the tribal people from the island that let us use the island were doing this sacred ceremony. And out of nowhere, our videographer let off the biggest fart I've ever heard in my entire life, but by accident. And he was so embarrassed. And I think we were all laughing or trying not to laugh, but the other tribes people didn't find it funny. So they were like being really dead serious about it, deadpanning. And we were all
at least kind of 15 people there. And not only, maybe 15 to 20. And not only did he fart, but it was just so silent. And then he went, I can't believe I just did that.
Yes. He was a really great guy, Mark. He is, and he did a great job recording that documentary. But yeah, it's really cool that we're going back to that, because it was such an incredible experience, and it was an example of what we're talking about our ability to go big, even our farts, to go big with whatever it is that we're doing and think differently about things. I mean, what an incredible idea. Rent an island, 6 people from around the world. What did it cost us? Maybe 30 to 50 grand, something like that.
I don't even remember. But what it did for profile, and this is the most important thing, like thinking creatively outside the box leads to so many opportunities, because people get to hear about you. We were in the media, and so it takes you on a journey where you just don't know what email is going to come into your inbox. You don't know how people want to reach out to you and become a client of yours as a result. So I think whatever the investment was, we got back so much more because it was something different.
Yeah, that's so cool. And a metaphor I've been thinking about recently as a coach myself, getting back into the coaching arena more of recent. And there's things like, I see it as almost like a boxing or a fighting metaphor, that there's certain things you do consistently in your business that just keep you going. You post content, you do videos, you do Facebook Lives, you send emails to your database, you create YouTube videos. There's things that you just do. You do sales calls, you show up with your clients. And that's the way that I see that. It's kind of just like different training. So it's just like smashing the boxing bag. It's getting the volume in so that you've got the strength and the cardio and the resilience there. Right. But then then you see like highlights of fighters, and they do these crazy moves, like UFC fighters that just like on the highlight reel, they've practiced some crazy move or done something big and outrageous that's just like scored the whole attention, but they were doing the consistent things over and over again. And I feel like most coaches think that just smashing the bag is going to be enough. And so most coaches are in a fight between getting themselves off the couch and to smack the bag, and then back on the couch, and then smacking the bag and back on the couch. But the thing that's going to really have you stand out and make your noise, like Conor McGregor in the fighting space, is being different, being loud, going after something, being yourself, and showing that flavor in the most unique way. It'd be really cool if on this we actually brainstorm some ideas, because I reckon because right now we're doing this podcast. The goal of the podcast, or where it's led, is the idea of creative, big, exciting thinking. And I think the more examples, the more creative people get in their own mind. So listeners right now, or viewers right now, would be thinking, yeah, I wonder what I could do myself. Like you could easily, like people could go to, at the moment, there's things are pretty interesting, but one of my friends was on a dating show the other day. There was an online dating show that was done in a Facebook group. Okay. And the way that it worked is like, to view the show, you just had to join the Facebook group. And it was like, it was recorded virtually over Zooms, but each week they had different challenges around dating. It was kind of like The Bachelor, but it was like a conscious version of it. And there was a bunch of chicks, and there was one guy, and each week they'd jump on different episodes that had a different topic. So once they had like a different forms of coaching. So a different expert would come on and ask them all questions, and they'd have to respond. And then someone would get the rose, or like be the one that wins that round, to get a chance to go on a date. And the date would be like a Zoom date, and they would also go in the group, and they get to know each other. It was just a really interesting concept. And there was a few thousand people, like maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people that joined that group and were watching over the 6 to 8 weeks. And it wouldn't have cost that much to set something like that up. I mean, maybe you'd pay each one of those experts. They probably would have done it for free, but you might have paid them a couple $100 per week per expert. Yeah. Everyone else would have done it for free. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be a massive financial investment. It's just, you say, it's about that unique creativity, and especially now in this kind of COVID lockdown that a lot of people are in, it gives the opportunity for creativity and just really thinking outside the box. I think also, you've got channels like, or platforms like Netflix, people that are craving content and are just open to being pitched to in terms of unique ideas. And a lot of us think, I can't do that. I can't go to Netflix and pitch an idea. And that's what I thought very early on with my first idea in Fiji, that I'm not good enough to do this. But then I just went, screw it. What's literally the worst that could happen? And in fact, I went to TV production companies and I pitched this idea, and they said no. They were like,
which idea was it?
So Tribe Wanted, the first concept in Fiji. And I pitched the idea, and they were like, no, you've never worked in TV. There's too many island-based TV shows. There was obviously Shipwrecked, Survivor, and Survivor, and then there was a show in the UK at the time called Shipwrecked, and they were like, nobody wants another island-based TV show. And so I thought, if I can get this in the media, that will be the game changer for me. So that's what I did. There was a newspaper, it's called the Metro, and it goes out on the Underground in London. And I knew that was the breeding ground for TV production companies and researchers who are on their way to work, and they're going through the newspaper for ideas. And so, yeah, I got it in there. And that day I had 80 TV production companies contact me.
No way.
Many of the ones that had said no.
Wow.
In fact, one company offered to invest £100,000 into the business and wanted to build the business. We said no to them, and we worked with Liz Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch's daughter, and we turned it into a TV show in 3 countries. But it's just thinking, like, if there's a no here in this avenue, then there's a yes somewhere else. You've just got to keep going down the avenues to find the solutions. And I think even now, more than ever, because of Netflix and Stan and all these other opportunities, like, there's great opportunities for coaches right now.
Yeah. So can you throw some ideas out there? Like some things that like you've been thinking about, maybe like that you would be comfortable to share, or just like random, like giving people lots of different examples of sort of different creative things they could do?
I think there's always an opportunity. So if you think about what, obviously we're talking the coaching world about lead magnets, and a lead magnet being, a download, an ebook, a checklist, a webinar, that kind of stuff online. But if you kind of magnify that 100%, like what would be like a lead magnet on steroids? What would be a lead magnet that's alive? So one example for me is, if you're a relationship coach, I love the idea. I'd love to find a relationship coach to do this with. But imagine like being in the city center, like Melbourne, Flinders Street, and you've got, like, on a Saturday, you've got these kind of guys that are going out and kind of to find clothes to wear for the night out to kind of get the chicks. But this idea of, what if you could like work with them before, like meeting them, and then before their night out, and teaching them that it's not just about clothes, it's about who you are, your personality, how you come across, how you deliver yourself, and then actually go out that night with them, filming it, to see them take action on what you've taught them. It's like, that guy just who was underconfident, now just asking the girl that he, kind of fancies if he can have a number or whatever it is. But just this live example where you're showing and kind of showing and highlighting your skills live, rather than just download my ebook.
Yeah. So it's just like making it way more practical.
live, real, tangible. There's every single opportunity like that. I worked with a coach, and she was in New Zealand, and she wanted to be known as the city's life coach. So we had a whole series of opportunities where she went to cafes and she just sat in a cafe and she gave people the opportunity to just have a live kind of 20-minute coaching session with her. And the cafes knew that she was coming. They were giving out flyers. We got her on media, TV, radio, and people were just booking in.
Wow.
To have a coffee and a chat with her. And she got so much media exposure from it, but also clients as a result, because people have heard of coaches, but they've never experienced it. And that's what she offered.
So did she then record the 20-minute combos?
Yeah, she had the permission to record them. She was even life coaching in nightclubs. So you've got all the kind of guys and girls that are kind of drunk outside and actually just lost and just kind of filling that void with drink and sex and drugs. And she was actually just profoundly sharing some deep content with them and again, filmed it. And again, that got media exposure, but led to parents buying coaching sessions for their kids so that they could have clarity of direction.
Wow. And avoid getting to those people they were seeing in the videos that were drunk and like meaningless, and go, like, hey, we could solve this in advance.
Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be, out of the box. You don't have to have $50,000 to lease an island and take people to from around the world to an island. That's not necessary. It's just the creativity and outside the box that will take us to that next level.
Wow. Is there anything that you've thought about doing that you haven't done that you want to bring up? That's not not like an idea to, like one that you're not massively attached to or you're not wanting to actually do.
Well, no, there's one that I'm massively attached to that I'll talk to you about offline, off podcast.
There's one that I've thought about that I haven't done, and it was going to be called seven figures in 7 days. And I was essentially going to do it in a few different niches where within 7 days I would get clear in a niche, launch some ads, get on the phone and close some 5K sales, like 4 or 5K sales into different niches. So it's like, cool, we're doing a relationship niche this week and we're going to attempt to get it to 7 figures, like a 7-figure run rate of 20K a week. So 20K, 7 figures in 7 days, and make it to like a mini docker. That was one that I thought of doing that I didn't end up doing, but I could still be on the cards.
You never know. Yeah, absolutely. So are you saying that's with like you doing that?
Yes. But I guess I could help coach someone else to do it.
Because I think that's the other awesome opportunity is different people in different niches. Your relationship coach, whether it's a gym owner or PT or whatever it is, and actually working with them to set them on the path for 7 figures in 7 days. There's a guy that did a TV show on Amazon, and it was a crazy idea. He was bringing people together from all over the world, and within 4 days they were solving like 4 of the world's biggest problems.
Wow.
So for example, one was how to stop a hurricane, and he literally brought like the world's best minds together in order to really look at the world's most craziest problems that would in the most common understanding be like, you could never stop a hurricane on planet Earth, but that was his focus, and Amazon were open to that, and he's got the show on Amazon. So there's so much opportunity.
So what you're essentially saying there is like, there was a random person that had an idea to do this, and then they pitched it to Amazon. Amazon took it on and funded the show, and now he's got a show on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's crazy. So how does the process of pitching a show work?
Well, I think there's 2 ways. There's a traditional way, which is a long route, and then there is another way which is more creative, and it's kind of shorter.
It's highly illegal. But
well, there's lots of, I would partner with a production company. So if you've got an idea for a TV show, I'd find the top 10 biggest TV production companies in your country who are notably going to be Endemol, Shine, Endemol. There's loads of them, and reach out to them, and they will have a conversation with you. But of course, kind of what their contracts will look like will be lower than what you'd want financially from a commercial point of view. But what I did was give the example and do something live that then brought them to you. So, for example, the island in Fiji, the original concept Tribe wanted, if I'd have gone to a TV production company, which I did, but they would have made it want to make it into a show. So they'd have been like, okay, what celebrity can we get on as the presenter? Who are the names that we can bring that will then bring other people on board? And that would have just removed everything that I was kind of seeking to build. So I launched it with me, and I did the video, and it was around me with this idea. I brought on board a business partner. And so therefore the TV show became the documentary about, it was called Paradise or Bust. Can this or can't this work? So I secured myself as being on the show because it was about me. So thinking creatively, but commercially, intellectually, about making sure that you are at the heartbeat of the kind of contents that you can't be removed and lose profile and obviously the financial benefits as well.
Yeah, I think initiative is like the big thing that's one of your superpowers. Like you just have a lot of initiative, a lot of ability just to be like, okay, cool, there's this thing. Let's just try reaching out here. Let's just film this video. Let's just reach out to these newspapers or magazines or networks. How do you, what do you think when like at the moment you've got this idea that when you haven't told me about yet, we're going to say offline. So what are your thoughts around this? Like, are you just like, cool, I'm just going to reach out to shows and to different networks and just do my best to pitch it, and if they don't take it, I'm going to start myself? But like, what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if it fails? Like, how do you navigate that?
But you've got to limit it, right? So for example, when you and I went to Fiji the second time, there was the financial investment that we knew that we could handle between us. There was a finite period of time, so it was 2 weeks. So we could plan for the best. We could also plan for the worst, right? So I think not setting up something that would, would be like 12 months of, financial investment and time investment, but what is that trial of the story that could give the idea and the concept that you could then take to TV production companies, and also tying the media into it. So I work a lot with media now, and we've just got a client that was interviewed in the New York Times, and it's about how do we bring the media into the center of this, because then it increases the exposure and therefore opportunity and ability for sponsors and commercial partnerships, all that kind of stuff. The other perspective is, again, in COVID, I was thinking creatively, because my thing is about building tribes, right? Building communities. And so I was thinking about how one of the biggest personal development event companies in the world, which is Success Resources, that run events for Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki and Gary Vee, and that they have over 500 events per year happening that would have stopped because of COVID. This is a $100 million a year business that is now grounded to a halt. So I was like, they need a tribe. Right. So they had a Facebook page and they had an email database, but they didn't have a tribe. So I was like, I'm just going to email them. I'm just going to email them and say, what you need is this. And that built this crazy, awesome relationship with them, where they said, okay, we're going to have you share a virtual stage with Tony Robbins to see whether this works. And I had 2,000 people attend my live training. And then 200 people became clients. So then I had this meeting with Veronica Chu, who was the owner and founder with her husband, Richard Tan of Success Resources. And they were like, you've proved yourself. This is what we need. We want you to launch a tribe with us. You've got access to our whole team. Anything that you need, let's make it happen. And we've now gone through that process of launching something called the Succeed Movement. But that came about because I was like, okay, where is the biggest need right now in the sector and niche that I work in? And how can I capitalize on that and reach out to people? Because I confidently have a solution to a problem that they have right now.
Wow, that's super impressive. Really impressive and super cool. And again, it's just initiative. And I think like me being devil's advocate so that I can squeeze more confidence out of you for the listeners.
Devil.
Ask asking like, what happens if it doesn't work? I think the question that people need to be asking is like, what happens if your crazy idea does work? Because like, how does every TV show that's ever been created get created?
But what happens? I don't think like what happens if it doesn't work. I don't see that as the issue, because when you boldly go out and do something that is against the norm, then you get people, it takes you in a direction that you could never have gone in. It opens doors for you that would never have been opened if you didn't do that thing.
Mm.
So if the idea itself doesn't work, it still increases your profile. It increases opportunity. It increases joint venture opportunities. It increases, like you and I know that because of that, we launched the idea again in Fiji, that a number of people joined the program and the course and the offering because they saw that we audaciously did something that was unique. So there's no failure.
Mm.
The failure is in keeping everything the same and not doing anything different and not standing out from the crowd, because then
Yes.
your uniqueness is never shared with the world. That's failure.
I love that. This has been such a powerful chat so far, and I'm going to get you back on. But before we go, I've got a couple of things I want to do. I've got one more question that I want to ask.
Yes.
But before I ask that question, where do you want to direct people off the back end of this chat?
So I have a Facebook group called We Build Tribes. There's about 34,000 people in it now.
Is that I Work in Personal Development converted?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So we changed. So it used to be called I Work in Personal Development, and it was changed to We Build Tribes. We just focus on tribe building. So most important thing, if you don't have an audience, nobody's going to buy your stuff. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have bowness.com.au, which is my website.
Amazing. And before I ask you the last question, Mark, I just wanted to honor you for a second, because you really are an incredible human being across personal development and business. That story that you shared earlier, your upbringing, I mean, that's some seriously difficult shit to work through. I mean, I'm just so impressed that you came out the back end of that, getting to the point where you want to end your life, and the first thing you do the day after is launch a, a big initiative to change other people's life under that pretense that I've only got one shot. I mean, to be able to turn that around that quickly is incredible. And, you know, we've known each other for ages now, and I see your beautiful personality shine through. You seriously are a genuine guy, and I'm grateful to have you as a friend. And I think the world's so much better as a place, especially the coaching industry as well, for having your bright mind and big heart in there. So thank you for being you, man.
No, thank you.
Pleasure. So my last question is this. If some random person that you couldn't see, understand their background, business type, niche, anything, just came to you and just said, Mark, I'm going to give you $1 million, but in exchange, I want your single biggest tip, resource, tool that you could offer me, and you know nothing about them, what would be the most valuable piece of advice you'd have?
Wow. Just the last question.
Question.
What would it be? Really interesting. So can I say a couple of things?
Yeah, go for it.
I'd say definitely think creatively about what it is that you're doing, because there are so many carbon copies of everybody else in the world. There's so many carbon copies of Gary Vee. You know, when I first started, I wanted to be like Eckhart Tolle. You know, my language and my tone and my writing, and I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't.
So glad that you didn't, because you are so much of a character. Eckhart Tolle was he's a character as well, but not like you are. He plays his role. But yeah, you're Mark.
But your uniqueness, that every single individual, in as much as we have, you know, our own kind of unique fingerprints, we have our unique purpose, and that's the most important thing to tap into, because it's easy to get lost in people telling you do the Facebook ads, do the webinar, do the things, and actually lose sight of your uniqueness. So for me, that is the $1 million truth. The other thing I'd say is to build the right team. It's so important that you have the right team around you that you absolutely trust. We've all made mistakes with having wrong team members on board because we are passionate about growing. So and when you and I talked about this the other day, but you lose oversight. You just fit somebody into a role because the role needs fulfilling without really thinking about, whether they are the right person.
Yeah, and in my experience, it was also about trying to fill the role quickly and conveniently. I didn't want to
Yeah.
take the time to really thoroughly find the perfect person because I was impatient. I really wanted things to work so quickly.
And if we focus on your uniqueness and bringing that into the world, you've got to make sure that every single person on your team is aligned with that uniqueness and purpose. Otherwise, they are the representative of you to your
Mhm.
audience, to your clients, to to anybody that your company is engaging with. And you've got to make sure your business stands for that uniqueness.
That's so true. Even for massive companies like retail companies and franchises, like if I went to like a Boost Juice and I deal with someone that's like my first three experiences with people that have no kind of like positivity or vibe or energy, I develop an association to what their whole business is about.
Mm.
It's actually really
Even the other
interesting.
day, I was in a Uber, and I got into the car. The guy didn't say hi to me. He was on the phone to somebody else for the whole journey, and
Really?
then he just stopped, like wherever we arrived to destination, we just stopped, and it wasn't like bye. It was just I was like, just get out the car. But and again, in this environment that we're in, we've got this whole shift now towards really paying attention to the consumer's needs
Yeah.
and not seeing people as this mass kind of, okay, they've bought the product or the service, but really paying attention to detail. And I think that combined with that, as we said, that unique creativity, we can create awesome businesses that truly do impact the world.
That's amazing, Mark. Thank you so much for that whole interview and your time today. Had an absolute blast and looking forward to jumping on your podcast next week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, buddy.
Big love.